All right. Hopefully everybody had a good break. We're going to resume. We've got 2 more talks, and then we get to go to the cocktail hour. But we're going to kick off with a panel. Probably maybe one of the most popular topics is ROI. So I'm excited to hear about ROI and can you measure transformation. I will say I am beginning to get a bit insecure about my lack of patents, as our next moderator has 14 patents. She's been in XR for over 15 years, which is also a long time, so props for sticking out for 14 years. Ashley Crowder is the CEO of Ventana, and she will be moderating our panel. Welcome, Ashley.
Thanks so much. Thanks for joining us today. Yeah. I'm Ashley. I'm the co-founder of Ventana. We're a 3D asset management platform that automatically optimizes, converts 3D files. But I'm here today with some incredible industry experts across medical device, DoD, aerospace, and logistics. And I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves, and we're going to get into how they're all measuring ROI on their XR projects.
All right, I'll go first. Thanks, Ashley. So my name is Paul Davies. I'm with Boeing, specifically the Boeing Research and Technology Group. I've been working in the XR space, mostly in AR for, it makes me sound really old, like 18 years. Seems a long time ago. Been focused on manufacturing use cases for maybe about the last 10 years. And I'm a technical fellow, which is part of the group that sort of sets the technical direction for the company. And really happy to be here, excited for a good panel.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Markham with Delta Airlines. I've been with Delta for 29 years, 25 of that in the training industry, in the training department. I've been involved in the VR for, I guess, since like 2017. I was the first one, I always say, to take the dive at Delta. Everybody was waiting to see what would happen. So I dove off the cliff with VR, and they're like, okay, this might be something we can look to, and he's still here. He didn't get fired. So, so I got my Delta family here, team with me here to support. So thank you all.
Hi, my name is Nike Adeoye, and I work for FedEx. I've been with FedEx for 8 years now, close to 8 years. And my group works in advanced technology and innovation space, where we assess robotics for our operations, autonomous vehicles, which is one of my biggest projects, and also human-augmented solutions for enterprise as well. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tommy Kopek. I work at Zimmer Biomet. We're a medical device company. I'm a senior manager for digital medical education. I've been there for 2.5 years. Previously, I was in higher education, so I have a lot of, kind of the learning design background and some medical healthcare background as well. We help to educate surgeons on how to safely and effectively use the components that we manufacture as they, safely put those into our patients. Oh, and we utilize virtual reality and mixed reality technologies to enhance and ramp up that training.
Hi, I'm Michael Hyatt. I've been with Northrop Grumman for 4 years, and I've worked with AR in one way or another for about 5 years. I was at United Airlines before. I touched AR a little bit and then really focused on AR at Northrop Grumman. I have a couple of my teammates here. Hello, Pablo, Kirsten, and our partners from Scope AR here. Hello, everyone. At Northrop, we deployed an AR work instructions system to give our technicians AR work instructions as they build our aircraft. Personally, I was involved with the F-35 assembly line, so we deployed an AR work instruction systems to build our F-35. Our portion of the F-35 jet.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dustin Slate. I'm a systems engineering manager. My whole career has been in manufacturing. I currently work at IDEX, which is a veterinary medical diagnostics manufacturing company. And I've got a history in paper, DoD, aerospace, and medical device. Last year, I was a conference attendee with zero experience for XR in industry, and I'm currently still in XR infancy, I would say. So I'm very excited to be a participant on this panel, and would encourage all of the new folks who are in the audience to continue leaning in and asking questions and participating, because this is cool stuff and you're doing the right thing by being here. So excited to continue to talk about this and participate with these awesome folks who I've met from doing exactly what you're doing now.
Amazing, right? And besides being cool stuff, like there really is ROI to the bottom line of companies, right? So let's start with some success stories. So Kevin, I know you've got some pretty impressive stats on what you've been able to accomplish.
So yes, they're going to throw me right in there.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So with ROI, I get that question a lot. How do we measure ROI at Delta with VR? I even get that from our executive team. It's really hard to measure the ROI, return on investment. Your investment is what you put into it. But our measurement is how our learners are retaining what they're learning in the classroom environment, and then backing it up with the VR. How are they retaining the de-ice program? How are they retaining what they learned and go out and actually use that? Testing it, all kinds of different ways you can test it. When we started in 2017 with our proof of concept, after we got the proof of concept, they were like, how are we going to test this to see if it works? So we kind of brainstormed of what we're going to do. One of the testing modes is, you just can't put the headsets on and, everybody. So we actually brought a group into the office one day to our headquarters. We flew them all in, said, hey, you're going to do the VR. A lot of them are excited. Some of them weren't excited. One of them I can point out, I like to use this one. He retired a few years ago. He had 40 years with Delta at the time. We drug him to Atlanta kicking and screaming. He did not want to put a VR headset on. He didn't want anything to do with it. We put it on him. He was doing the aircraft walk around, our proof of concept. And there's one, and if you fly, you might notice there's big yellow hoses connected to the airplane. That's putting the conditioned air in the heat or the air or the cold. If you step over it in the VR world, it will tell you, hey, that's a safety hazard. Don't do that. Well, he took it off and he looked at me. He said, I step over that every day. Every day I step over that air hose. And I said, yeah, but you're not supposed to. It's a safety hazard. So he went back to the station. He called me 2 weeks later. He goes, I haven't stepped over the air hose since that day. He goes, I've been told 1,000 times in 40 years not to do it. But he goes, every time I see the air hose, it pops in my face. Safety hazard, don't step over that air hose. He said, so it works.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. And then I know you also said from metrics tracking, you could do 5 trainings a day, which went up to... Yes.
So with our de-ice program, our proficiency program, they came to me, I guess, a few years ago, our safety team, and said, right now, with the de-icers, and a lot of you, if you've flown in the wintertime, you've probably sit on the pad and got de-iced when they're spraying the airplanes for snow and ice. We train those employees in July in Minneapolis. It's an 85-degree day. We're spraying water on the airplane, so we bring them all in. And you got to realize, some of them, it's the first time. This is their first year at Delta. I mean, they're not like experienced de-icers out there. We train new ones every year. We need thousands of de-icers to cover the system. So we bring them in July. We put them through classroom environment. We teach them. We take them out to an airplane. They go up in the bucket. They spray it. We say, okay, good job. You passed everything. Go back to your station. So it might be 3 months later, they get called up. So it's like getting called up as a pitcher. It's like, you're called up, now it's snowing outside, you need to go de-ice. I've been in that seat where you go, oh, I hope I remember everything. Because they told me if I don't do it right, this airplane could not fly. So way we tested in the past was we would send what we call our ground safety advocates out to stations, and we would hope it was snowing when they were there so they could sit in the truck and watch them de-ice an airplane. Not to scare you, but we were doing this with you sitting in the airplanes, and they're learning, and we're watching them going, yeah, that's a good job, or no, you need to correct this. Afterwards, we give them what they needed to correct and what they were doing wrong. And we were doing about 5 a day throughout the domestic system, so out of thousands of employees. So they came to me. So we put the virtuality together. We worked with futurists. They did the first phase. We put it together and put it out that year. I started reading the data coming in through the Arbor, and I actually called and I said, is this correct data? Because it's showing that we're doing about 150 a day.
Awesome
said, yes, that is correct. Yes.
Amazing increase. And Paul, I know you've got some amazing stats from your project as well.
Sure. Yeah. So my work is mostly around in the factory providing 3D work instructions to our own employees, mechanics, electricians building airplanes. So for us, success would be like reduced build times and probably more importantly, higher quality, higher first pass quality. So quality, fewer defects, better adherence to the processes. So a couple of really good success stories we've had. I've talked about one actually several times last year, AES, I talked about it a little bit. Wiring installation was our first major success story. We saw when we started, we built a software platform in Unity for the HoloLens, and it was basically to take existing CAD models of wiring and display them on the airplane in a registered fashion. So we saw installation defects be reduced by like 80% and the time to install the bundles down by about 20%. So usually if you go faster, you would expect to make more mistakes or vice versa, but we saw both effects. And that's actually well documented now. There's been several companies and universities that have done many studies now that have looked at those kind of effects and always sort of generally consistent, bigger impact on quality, reasonable impact on speed. And the other more recent example I can sort of share is on the defense side of our business. We've got actually in Philadelphia, we've got a program where we're installing on an aircraft these things called attach points. They're just little clips that go on the inside of a fuselage. And they're used to mount other systems on, other interior systems. So we were, if an attach point is missed, that can be expensive depending on when it's found in the process. So initially, we were sending fuselages, and about 30% of the fuselages had missing attach points, and they were being found later in the production process. There could be like 1,000 attach points on an aircraft, just to give you some context. So about 30% of them were not installed correctly the first time. That was discovered later in the production, which gets very expensive to correct. So when we started using our tool, we started importing the locations of the attach points and showing them to the inspectors. They were able to find those missing ones much sooner, where it's just a very simple thing to fix when there's no other systems installed. And now they haven't had a single escapement from where they make the fuselage to where it goes into final assembly. So we're looking at what that means in terms of cost savings and overall bigger impact, but I think it's going to be pretty significant. So those would be some of the big things for us.
That's amazing that these projects ended up so well, but I know it's so important to choose that first POC to make sure that you have that initial success to then build on. So I know, Dustin, you're working on your first POC right now. How did you go about choosing this specific project? Like, what were some of the things you thought about within your organization to make this first one a success so that you can build on it?
So one of the things I've been focusing on and working through is sort of aligning our project, our pilot project, with the organizational goals and values. Obviously, companies value making money or margin expansion, right, is a term that we use. One of the things that our organization is currently investing in is our automation of consumables. So my sphere of influence in systems engineering is I work in our instrument division. We manufacture diagnostic analyzers. Our automation doesn't do that, right? We also manufacture consumables. So in my initial endeavors to create a pilot project, I did all these calculations on our instrument manufacturing processes. And by the time I got to the end of this great thing that I had all this expertise on, I decided and realized that no one in the C-suite is going to care about this because everyone's excited about the new piece of automation equipment that we just built. So we've shifted our focus now for our proof of concept to develop these tools and implement these tools and augmented solutions on some of our new equipment, some of the shiny equipment where our executive interests are currently, looking at where our organization is currently spending money, right? Where they're investing dollars. It's a much easier sell. I'm not a salesperson, I'm an engineer, right? So this is not my area of expertise, but I'm trying to leverage the vendors that I'm working with and at the same time, take advantage of, I think, excitement and hype and get involved at the right time and showcase the opportunity of this technology so that I get an investment when I've demonstrated the power of some of the tech. So that's a strategy that I'm trying to employ.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly smart to align with the company's top goals of the year, which in your case, it's implementing this automation equipment, and then proving it, you'll get more budget to do everything else.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of budget, I know, Michael, you had some interesting points on what is the true cost of implementing, and what are some of those things you need to be considering when you go to deploy XR?
Right, because ROI means we compare the cost to the benefits, right? So it's a net return. So we did a very detailed, I would say excruciating, but let's say detailed cost-benefit analysis before we deployed our system. And it was really interesting to pick the most valuable use cases. But on the cost side, sometimes people ask me, okay, how much does a HoloLens cost? So I say $3,500. And then they say, okay, I think I need 10. So my project is going to cost $35,000. And there's nothing further from the truth because because it's not just the HoloLens. There's much more than that meets the eye than a person wearing a headset. So of course, when you do a proof of concept, you can be very basic, very rudimentary, and just have a headset with something loaded on it and just do some things. But if you want to deploy an enterprise-grade, robust system, you need to build this whole technology stack, starting with our AWS like hosting servers, install the software on the servers. That software needs to go through cybersecurity for scanning and everything, then we can install it. Then, of course, we need the headset to connect to that server, so we need some firewall configurations. We installed the app on the HoloLens. This app needs to connect to Wi-Fi, so there's a whole stack of technology components, and that takes money, right? It costs something, so that contributes to the cost of the system. And then the software, we install software licenses, firewall configurations again to go log in the users with their actual ID so they don't have another ID and password to remember. So a lot of investment, like either labor or services like AWS hosting or software licenses. And then there's another investment, that's the cost of creating the content. Because once you have a system, you just have a system. You can put the headset on, if there's nothing to show, it's not very valuable, right? So we had our manufacturing engineering team create the content from existing 3D models, put them in the great Scope AR worklink system. Thank you. Shameless plug. And then we had content. Then design engineering had to review the content. We piloted the content on the shop floor and got some feedback from the shop floor. So a lot of authoring. So all these costs need to be compared to the benefit that Paul just outlined. So it's a more complex equation than just how much is a headset, and I think I need 5. So this is my project.
Yeah, well, and I think that's especially as you start to scale from initial POC to how does this really scale up across the business, and Ventana can help with the CAD stuff. But Nikkei, I know you had some, you initially worked on some of the driverless vehicle POCs, and now you're doing AR. How have you gone about setting expectations from POC to scale with some of these like cost drivers and benefits in mind?
That's a good question. So we all know that some of these technologies take time. VR and XR has been around for a long time, but some companies are still trying to find their way around it. And taking the small piece first and chewing on that and letting everyone know that this is not the end product. You are just taking a walk down so that you can run and fly. And being able to ensure that you carry everybody along while you're doing it. I've been managing the autonomous vehicle pilot for 3 years now, and we're still not taking the driver out, as of today. But we know that as a company, we do need to prepare for that time. It's gonna come. How do we prepare for it? By being engaged, by starting to test our operations. How is it gonna work? What's security supposed to do? What's even yard operation gonna look like? And helping to educate the leadership around what to expect, when to expect it, and what your assumptions are. You have to keep confirming that your assumptions are correct, because my assumptions 3 years ago, some of them have changed right now. And being able to carry everybody along around how that changes, what the expectations are, what the cost savings are at the end of the day, and when we're supposed to scale up to be able to realize that cost savings is very important.
Yeah, I think bringing those internal champions at all levels is super important. And Tommy, I know you had an interest. You kind of came in after VR had been done, and some people had some sour taste in their mouths with it. So you had to kind of start from zero. But how did you do that?
Absolutely, yeah. So when I started, we didn't have any kind of fleet management system in place, and we were on Quest 1 headsets, so kind of a double whammy here. But things were not stable. The apps crashed. We didn't really know what we were doing. I mean, honestly, at that point, before I was hired, there was one person flying to, we host these medical training and event courses. So surgeons would come and they would do like live trainings, and then we'd have VR there to kind of supplement. But the apps would always crash and no one knew what to do. So when I began in this role in July of 22, we quickly noted that we needed to get a mobile device management system, and so we met up with Arbor XR, and we're very happy with them. So that stabilized the platform, and from there we upgraded to Quest 2s, which was also at that time a big step for us. But that rocky start made it difficult to get the buy-in we needed. So not only do we have kind of the external friction of convincing surgeons who maybe don't normally put headsets on to train. We had that. We also had kind of that friction of internally, well, we already saw VR and it sucked and it was difficult, and we don't want to add that into our course again or make a formal plan for it. So, it was a pretty big lift initially, but again, being able to, part of the ROI is showing that this is a functional system. It operates smoothly. We're developing more modules, and so developing those internal relationships. So the people who didn't give up on us, really leaning in on them and showing them how valuable this can be, and how, again, the scalability of it is incredible. Versus, again, I talked about, we kind of host, so part of our training and education, and the rough part of ROI is that we're not tied to sales at any level. So, that financial ROI is a little hard to defend, but what we can do is people are more engaged at trainings or more prepared when they did come to trainings, and that's part of our new strategy of how can we get the most out of this, and how can we utilize these technologies, and having those champions internally to help push the technology and to help with the development has been a huge benefit for me in making that kind of task of convincing people to utilize this technology much easier, much more straightforward, and just a lot more ready to see wins all around when everyone kind of starts to work together. So yeah, having internal champions is highly important, in my opinion, for getting that ROI, because if the internal people believe it and can push it out, that makes it a lot easier for adoption across the board.
Yeah, people need to be wearing the headsets, right? Or using the software. If they're not using it, then yeah, it's not working. But Michael, I know you had some interesting insight. You were like, I just put a headset on everybody.
Yeah, I think on adoption, I would mention three things. So for executives, the best is to just put a headset on their head. So we can mock it a little bit at the very initial stages, but we put a headset on their head and show them the 3D models being displayed on the aircraft. That really sold them. So it was always on a full-fledged system because we were seeking support and funding, but that really primed the pump. Then for shop floor adoption, it's more of a peer-to-peer relationship. So if we can find one champion, that's a good step. So that champion can educate or spread the good words among their team. So that's I think the first day we deployed. I think Pablo, maybe you were on the shop floor that day, and then with other team members, and there was a technician wearing the headset, and then another technician stopped by, and he said, "What are you doing?" And said, "Oh, it's really cool. Look, I can see this and that, and try it on." So propagation, I mean, adoption among peers is much better among technicians, because for them wearing the headsets is okay, but they need their peers to also have adoption and support. So.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I know you discovered something interesting. People have always kind of thought, oh, well, it's the younger generation would be more open to this. But I think you discovered something kind of different.
Yes, because the accepted idea is that, okay, the younger folks are going to adopt it faster, and the older folks not so fast. And that's not what we noticed. We didn't see it was related to age, more to tenure. So we could have like two, say, 30-something technicians. One has been doing this statement of work for the last 10 years, and it's like muscle memory to them. Another one, same age, but just new to the statement of work, just like came out fresh out of training. The more seasoned technician doesn't really need that much help step by step. The newer person does. I mean, and they really appreciate that step by step guidance on the product, because reading instructions is one thing. Even seeing a 3D model on a tablet or a computer is one thing, but seeing the parts on the aircraft or on the product is completely different. So it's much more beneficial for the newer technicians, and they could be newer because they just joined and just got trained to this statement of work, or they can be newer because we want to cross-utilize technicians. So a technician who's used to doing tubes and hydraulic jobs, we want to utilize them on an electric wire routing job. They're not so familiar with that job, but with augmented reality work instructions, they really hit the ground running.
Yeah, no, I thought that was so interesting. Age is just a number. It's not about that. And so throwing it out to the whole group, I mean, how do you go about measuring some of this stuff? You know, is it, I know Arbor XR has some great analytic tools, but like, what are different tools you all are using to track how things are going?
Okay,
I'll go ahead and I'll start. So I guess I don't have tools to measure. My tools would be the end user is kind of our measurement of what the feedback we're getting from the end user, the person out there that's actually putting the headset on, and how are they feeling about it? Are they understanding? I mean, a couple examples are, when they take the headset off, they're like, I really understand what I'm doing. And again, you realize, we've all been in this position as new hires at Delta. ACS Learning Airport Customer Service, we cover about 50,000 employees training. So a lot of new hires. So the ones that you're seeing out on the ramp working, before the VR, and still, because we're still, working on the ramp program a little bit and getting that finalized. But, they get a 1-week training or a 2-week training, and then they're put out on the ramp and told, please don't destroy our $100 million airplane, and please don't die. Okay, I mean, just be safe. Don't get hurt. And it's a very scary place, and we're having a lot of turnover. So when we interview these employees, or why are you leaving after 6 months? Why are you living here? I don't feel comfortable out there. I don't feel I got the proper training. They put the headset on, it gives them a little, okay, now I understand what I'm doing. I understand the environment a little bit better. Example, in the de-ice, when we called our boot camp, our training, our managing director for ACS went to the training last year. She went through the training, she came and told me, she said, I was really afraid to get in the truck and spray because I didn't know if I understood. They put the VR headset on me right before I got on. I sprayed the airplane and went, oh, I can do this. Now I understand what I just learned. Got up in the airplane and started spraying.
Yeah, I can share a little bit. So some of the things we look at to measure success would be, and we have things like job time when a certain, we call them installation plans or jobs, whatever we call them. They get checked out in the MES, the manufacturing execution system, and then checked in when they're complete. We can look at the time it took, and we've done a lot of that comparing. AR usage versus non-AR usage, and we can look at the number of quality defects that are recorded, NCRs, non-conformances, those kind of things. So that's been relatively easy to measure. What's been much harder for us has been putting a dollar value to say, reducing the number of defects. How do you put a dollar value on that? Well, you can do it sort of from the very easily, okay, well, this mistake wasn't made, so we saved 3 hours from not, having to rework it. But when all the knock-on effects of that, if a part is missing and then the plane moves on to the next stage in the assembly and then that person cannot do their job, so now the work's happening out of sequence, what's the cost of that? Is that going to introduce more quality problems? Do we have the part to replace? All those sort of knock-on effects, very hard to put a dollar value on. So I'll be honest, we've struggled with that. So if anyone has tips there, I'd love to hear them. Yeah, some of the things we've done.
Yeah, and to add to that, it's easy to measure the tangible benefits. It's much harder to measure the intangible benefits. When you talk about VR or even AVs, the first thing people think about is, oh, it's cool. But how do you measure cool? Right? And the way we do it internally is that you're not just doing it for the workforce of now, but you're also doing it for the workforce of the future. Most people, kids now, don't have the attention span of sitting in a classroom doing training all day for 8 hours. How do you prepare to have them hired? And you still need these workers, right? This cool device is what would, bring them into the fold. This company is very innovative. They care about what my needs, and they already have everything I need to get started with the job. And being able to speak that to our leadership has been very important, in that the value might not seem like dollars right now, but this is something you have to do to prepare for that future that you see yourself in.
Yeah, I love that. We were meeting with Intel recently, and they're like, we're planning a plant right now that's going to be operational 10 years from now. So how do we figure out what tech we need today for that, which is interesting, but yeah.
I'm going to add to, a way that we measure success within the apps themselves. They have metrics that are collected. So the number of, like in our case, again, you're going through a surgical procedure, so the number of tips you need. So we have like a practice mode where it tells you everything, and then ideally there's a test mode as well, so you can repeat that without any of the tips popping up. And so we recently had a sample case where we sent out headsets ahead of a course, and some of the surgeons, without us even mentioning that there's a test mode, were, the benefit to working with surgeons are that they're highly competitive. And so I saw this test mode, and so we didn't promote it, but they went on there and they went through all the runs. And since we didn't promote it and kind of tell them how to use it, they went through with, no hints. There's a way to ask for hints, and they didn't realize that. So those internal metrics within the mods themselves are really important and impactful. But kind of, like from, again, my background in like higher education and working on my PhD and all that, it's like, you'd really love to see, like a base intervention and like a post test. And we haven't quite made it that strategic or, that straightforward. But yeah, certainly like survey feedback is another way. Like, did the VR help you feel prepared? So you still get that qualitative feedback. I like quantitative feedback, but we're not to that point yet. But any of that data is helpful, because if the people come into the course, we were talking at lunch, one thing I didn't realize before getting into this industry is clearly the surgeons have to practice on cadavers. And if you didn't know, like, cadavers are expensive, and it's expensive to, to ship them around. And so if you can do, a really cheap, really repetitive, like no loss of any resource, whether we do like a practice, like we have sawbones, which is kind of like a model that you drive the drill bits into and all that, but it destructs them, right? They're destructive, so you throw them away and then you have to try another one. Or you can get in VR and get a really similar medical simulation. Again, I think someone earlier on one of the other talks talked about getting out of that mindset of like, it's not gamification, but the idea of a headset equals a video game. And again, medical schools have been using simulations, forever. And so this is just another way, another evolution of that medical training via simulation. So internally, our apps track some of it, But externally, we do want to elicit feedback from the learners and see if that made them any more prepared, or if they felt like that was, worth their time and effort.
Yeah, I never thought about the cost of a cadaver and then using that to calculate ROI and VR before today.
Cost savings, yeah.
To measure value, we use several tools. One of them was a simple stopwatch. So we work with our industrial engineering partners, and we did time the time it takes the technicians to do this specific job with AR, without AR, compared. We also use, like Paul mentioned, our manufacturing execution system, and compare the actuals of more jobs, say not just a couple of jobs, but 10 jobs or dozens of jobs with AR, without AR. And by the way, you need that duration. So you need to do the duration to give the technicians time to climb that learning curve, and also to have a good representative sample of jobs. So stopwatch, manufacturing execution system, and we get feedback from the end users on what's valuable, what's not so valuable, so we can direct our next scope to what's the most valuable. Also in terms of value, I think the system we deployed, because it has this whole technology stack I mentioned with all the robust enterprise-grade technology. Our MDM is Microsoft Intune. We manage the devices remotely. They connect through Wi-Fi. The technicians have a very smooth experience. We lay the foundation and for other systems to just come in and just incur their variable costs. We incur all the fixed costs on the first deployment. So the next project or the next program that will deploy AR will have pretty much just variable costs, and their ROI will be, their equation will be much different.
Awesome. It's already paid for. So.
Yeah, because actually we already started sharing with other sectors. We have one project in our space sector. They have very slow pace. I mean, they build one satellite a year maybe, so they can't take all the fixed costs, but because they only incur their variable costs, their ROI also looks good, because we were able to lay the foundation and share that foundation with them.
That's great. Yeah. And Dustin, how are you planning to measure your POC?
Well, I think it's really important to highlight the importance of both the qualitative and quantitative ROI, right? It's so much harder to assign a dollar value to the qualitative aspects, but and surveying and sentiment is where we derive the result, right? The summation. And there is value there, and stories are compelling. We hear that all the time, right? And so I've been baselining training results since I came to the last conference, right? With Likert scores, if you're familiar with that metric, scale 1 to 5. How good do you feel about the training you just did, right? So that once we start using the tools, we can have comparative. So I guess the lesson there is have a solid baseline, a comparative metric. Before you dive in to the new thing, make sure you have data of the old thing. Because once you're doing the new thing, you have nothing to compare it to, right? We are scientists after all, right? So we need the first thing before we're comparing it, right? If you can't evaluate your change if you're not measuring anything before you've changed it. For the quantitative stuff, right? My pilot, the proof of concept, is in a new place. We have no baseline data for that. It's brand new. It's still very shiny and clean. I mean, it's a medical device. Everything's pretty clean. But it's new equipment. We don't know the metrics yet. But remember, I work in another area, right, where we do have expertise in history. So this is where I've done all my calculations. And so here's my strategy, right? As a sub-pitch, it's hey, here's our use case. Here's this exciting thing that the C-suite is going to get very hyped about, hopefully. And also, we built this other thing, this other process that you probably won't care about, but here are some real numbers. We've had 70% of our service calls to this area. Our first troubleshooting step was troubleshooting step X. And 60% of the times, troubleshooting step X solved the problem. And this tool can empower our technician level employees to resolve the issue instead of our engineering staff. And guess what? We can assign a dollar value to off-shift engineering time, engineering hourly time, and I did all those calculations. Is it hundreds of thousands of dollars? No, but that's one small process in a small area of our multi-site manufacturing company. And multiply that by 10, 20, 50, 100 different types of procedures, and then all of a sudden, you have a pretty compelling use case. Oh, and also look at this thing we did on the brand new piece of automation. Don't forget. And guess what? This can also do this and that, and also AI. Isn't this cool? Like, hey, let's ship this project. So that's my strategy. Plus, everyone thinks it's cool. Look at the Likert scores. Everyone ranked it a 5, right? So I'm sort of like trying to stack up all the metrics.
Yeah. So next year we'll have to have you come back and show us this presentation, which would be great.
Sign me up. Sign me up, Jeff.
Yeah. But no, and so, we get the POCs, they're successful. What are some of the challenges and then scaling up across a business? I know many of you have conquered and run into them.
Yeah, I'll mention a couple of things. I mean, I'll say for us, fully integrating devices into the IT infrastructure, the IT ecosystem has been really hard for us. I mean, we started, back with the HoloLens 1, what was that, like 2016 or so? And back then, we know it was very difficult. It's a lot easier now. I mean, in terms of like MDM, there's Arbor XR and other solutions out there. The challenge for us has been convincing the right people in IT that we need to adopt those things. They try to take this, HoloLens or Magic Leap and put it into the same process as an iPhone or something. And it doesn't work, or it can work, but it's very expensive and customized. And so that's been a real challenge for us in terms of scaling it. I would say the other thing still is the user experience, I think, still has a long way to come in general, especially with head-mounted displays. We've got mechanics who are maybe working in hot environments, some areas, if you're in like the cargo hold of a 737, you can't even stand up. You're sort of on your hands and knees. You're trying to install wire bundles in awkward positions. And then, the next thing is, do it with a HoloLens on your head. All those things just chip away at the willingness of people to adopt it. And even though we know that it has significant business value, if it's difficult to use, people don't enjoy it, it's going to be an uphill battle. So we've seen a lot of that. We've had the successes I mentioned have been cases where we've had all the right people in the right place at the right time, and we've gotten over sort of that hill. The momentum builds, and then you can really push it through into success. But what we've noticed is that sort of very isolated. We've got one use case over here that's gone all the way, it works really good, everyone's happy. One over here works, everyone's happy, but we don't have that sort of blanket implementation. Which is really what we're trying to get to.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, that's why, when we work with companies, it's about, okay, we're API first. Can we upgrade your existing systems so you're not starting from scratch, but not forcing a round peg in a square hole? But yeah, it's interesting. Do other people have comments for?
I'll briefly say, I think it's been mentioned before too, but know your audience. So, you kind of mentioned it's not necessarily age, but maybe tenure. So we have the earlier surgeons, the residents, and the fellows are a little more apt to try the newer technologies, and it makes sense. If you're an experienced surgeon, you've been doing a technique for 20 years, the amount that you need to increase is pretty minuscule. But me as someone right out of med school going into a residency, my gap to like proficiency is pretty large. And so that's where these technologies are really helpful, in my opinion. So I think knowing your audience is crucial to being able to predict the success of your, technology implementation.
Yeah, I can jump in. I mean, challenges, obviously, it runs up to the executives trying to get the buy-in. I get, our leadership team will come to me and say, here's the situation, here's the issue we need to solve for. And I'll come back and say, okay, we can do it. In a VR world, it's going to take 2 to 3, 4 months to build. Oh, we need something like next week. Another shiny object just came along, another issue just came along. So we need that quicker. So it's getting that long term, with them. And then, again, with us, we've been involved. I've been involved with the VR for 7 years. We've proved it with the de-ice program. I mean, we proved that over and over. We're in phase 3, I think now, correct? I lose track, but phase 3. So this is our 3rd year. So we've proved that, and we keep improving on it. But it's just getting the other pieces and all the other ideas. We have hundreds of ideas we can use in the airline industry for VR. I mean, I can sit and rattle them off all day. It's just getting the executive buy-in that this is a good return on investment for them in the long term, and to, and draw that line of, hey, we're moving forward. We're done with the experimental stage and looking and searching and what we want to do in developers and what type of equipment we want to use. We've proved all those already, so let's just move forward and start launching this through the system.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. This was amazing. XR is not just cool, but clearly adding value to the bottom line of every business. So if you all have questions, I think people will be around after, but thank you all so much. This is great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.